Hey everyone, I hope that you're all doing well and that you and your families are all safe during this time. My name is Shea Charles. I'm currently a senior at the University of Hawaii at Manoa in the Department of Ethnic Studies. My project is titled Keʻeaumoku Street, a Mecca of Settler Colonialism. My research question is, how does Keʻeaumoku Street reproduce and sustain settler colonialism? For this, I'm defining settler colonialism as a systematic and institutional erasure of indigenous peoples, their rights, and their histories, which in turn benefit the dominant group and is rooted in white supremacy. So why Keʻeaumoku Street? Although other areas on Oahu also participate in the continuation and maintenance of settler colonialism and are also going through urban renewal, I felt that Keʻeaumoku Street was the best area to look at due to the location, the pre- and post-colonial histories of the area, my own personal connections, and the future of the area due to rail and TOD. The location of Keʻeaumoku Street was a huge factor, as it acts as a divide between different socioeconomic neighborhoods and spans from the top of the mountains down to Ala Moana Center. Along with the location of Keʻeaumoku Street, there is specific infrastructure such as bridges, churches, and commercial buildings. These public and private infrastructures shape the way that settler colonialism presents itself within this area. The pre- and post-colonial contact histories are also important to why I chose this area. Keʻeaumoku Street is a part of the larger Makiki Tantalus area, which was known to cultivate uʻula and kalo. Settler colonial histories include the building of Ala Moana Center, Korean bars and military men, and the building of Walmart on top of Kupuna Iwi. These shifts from pre-colonial contact to settler colonial histories make Keʻeaumoku Street stand out as the ways that settler colonialism is expressed changes with the different changes in histories. And lastly, my own personal connections to the area. I grew up in an apartment at the top of Keʻeaumoku Street and went to school in the surrounding areas. I spent the majority of my childhood here before moving to Manoa Valley, and even after me and my family moved, we still frequented the area, mostly the commercial end due to the amount of Korean markets and restaurants. A conversation that I had with a Korean restaurant worker in 2017 was a large inspiration for this project. She told my mother and I about the selling of the entire complex for the rail TOD projects. From this, I expanded my project to look at settler colonialism at large on this street as opposed to just as another form of gentrification. A little bit of background on the project. While working on this project, I wanted to make sure that I consistently came back to the question, how does Keʻeaumoku Street maintain and reproduce settler colonialism? To do this, I constantly referred back to the work of Haunani K. Trask, Gloria Anzaldúa, and Tina Grandinetti. Their respective fields in research informed my work and were in constant conversations with both each other as well as what I was seeing throughout the duration of this project. As for the methodology, this project used different methods of data collection, the first being the politics of memory, where I drew upon my own experiences living and growing up on Keʻeaumoku Street. With this, I also did mobile ethnographic research. I walked up and down Keʻeaumoku Street and observed the surrounding communities and infrastructures. Between these methods of data collection, I would reference my own memories and experience as a child and reflect on my own participation in settler colonialism on Keʻeaumoku Street and put that in conversation with what I was seeing as I walked up and down the street. The map on the screen shows Keʻeaumoku Street in its entirety. I broke up the street into 3 different sections, the first section being residential Keʻeaumoku Street. This section starts at Keʻeaumoku Place in Keʻeaumoku Street and goes down to Wilder Avenue in Keʻeaumoku Street. The next section is what I called the borderland, spanning from Wilder Avenue in Keʻeaumoku Street to Kinao Street in Keʻeaumoku Street. And the last section is the commercial area, which spans from Kinao Street in Keʻeaumoku Street to Kapiolani Boulevard in Keʻeaumoku Street, including Ala Moana. These 3 sections tell the story of Keʻeaumoku Street and map out the different ways that settler colonialism is reproduced and sustained on this street. The first area is residential Keʻeaumoku Street. I chose to designate this area as residential because of its lack of businesses and commercial usage. It's almost exclusively apartments and homes, aside for 3 large churches on this side of the street. One of my earliest memories living on Keʻeaumoku Street was when I was around 3 or 4 years old. My parents had brought home a large rocking lion and left it in the living room. And the next morning I woke up and screamed when I saw it standing there, not knowing it was fake. The reason this stuck out with me so much is because it was such a big lion in this small living room, and it took up so much space of our one-bedroom apartment. So as I walked up and down residential Keʻeaumoku, I thought about this memory and why it stuck with me. While walking up and down the street, I saw many large churches with short and stout apartments across them, and I thought about the one-bedroom apartment that me and my family shared and how so many other families are in this same situation on this street. But this was something that a lot of us recognize as a part of local life. One of the most notable parts of residential Keʻeaumoku Street are these churches and religious affiliations scattered along the street. There are 2 large churches and 1 small church on the 0.6-mile section of this street, and along with that, there are homes and cars with religious posters and signs, one of which has been there since I was living there as a kid on Keʻeaumoku Street. Both of these together are the ways that settler colonialism is reconstructed and supported in residential Keʻeaumoku by the urbanization and continued perpetuation of local life. According to neighborhoodscout.com, the specific area, the real estate price is 85% less expensive than most Hawaii neighborhoods. Rent is also 61% lower than most Hawaii neighborhoods, and the majority of residents are of East Asian descent. The top 1/3 of residents work professional jobs, while the next 1/3 work service jobs, and the last 1/3 work labor and trade skill jobs. This is a working class community, and because of this, I saw very few people lounging around, walking around, or playing within the small yards that are in the apartments. As I recall, this was also a part of the local life that a lot of us knew back in the day while I lived there as a child. I looked towards how Nanike Trask's work and what local meant for a lot of members of the community on Keʻeaumoku Street. For a lot of us, what we lived through was local life, but in reality, it was a part of a larger system which we perpetuated through the erasure of the histories of the space we were in, as well as participation in churches that dominated the area. The next section is borderland. I use Gloria Antozula's definition, which conceptualizes the geographical area that is most susceptible to la mezcla, or hybridity, neither fully of Mexico nor of the United States. I use this definition because the area is neither fully commercial or residential, but acts as a blend between the 2 spaces, and is a part of the border which separates these 2 spaces, the border being H1 and Makiki Bridge. While I walked around the area, there were families at Makiki Park. This was a place that was popular for Makiki residents, but as you walk closer to the bridge and even under the bridge, there are people who are unseen. This area is known to have a lot of houseless people. They're hidden under the bridge behind the parking lot, as well as across the freeway at Cartwright Park, where there is a large houseless community. This area's ability to hide houseless people from view of both residents and tourists is how the borderland perpetuates settler colonialism. It acts as a way to hide aspects of Hawaii that isn't paradise and keeps them contained and away from locals and tourists alike. The last section is commercial Keʻeaumoku Street. This designation was due to the amount of commercial businesses here spanning from Kinao Street and Keʻeaumoku Street to Kapiolani Boulevard and including Ala Moana Center. As a kid, me and my family not only frequented the area for entertainment, such as Ala Moana, but we also had connections to the Korean community here. As I went back, the Korean community still dominates most of the area with restaurants and markets and shops. But the most notable thing was the bars, exotic dance clubs, and massage parlors. During the day, the most prominent businesses are restaurants and places to shop. The area is predominantly Asian-run businesses with Chinese, Japanese, Korean, and Vietnamese owners dominating the area. As I walked the street during the day, there were tourists and residents around the area, but at night, as restaurants close and bars and clubs start to open, there seems to be an influx of tourists. There are many gentlemen's clubs, strip clubs, as well as massage parlors open at night. As I saw all of this, I reflect on the film Noho Heva, where the building of Walmart on top of Kupuna Iwi was documented. This is how settler colonialism operates in commercial Keʻeaumoku Street. Most people frequenting the area do not think about the histories of this area. Those histories are erased by the restaurants, shops, strip clubs, and bars. Even as I walk towards Ala Moana, where I see the portrayal of paradise and a very specific idea of Hawaiian culture, I can see where tourists and locals alike see paradise perpetuated by the clubs and mall. But I think about Hananike Trask's piece, Lovely Hula Hands, where she explores the prostitution of Hawaiian culture. Keʻeaumoku Street exploits a very specific idea of Hawaii and paradise that is gendered and appropriates aspects of Hawaiian culture. In conclusion, settler colonialism is a part of local life, and in communities such as Keʻeaumoku Street, we see that local life is a part of life on the street, and they perpetuate settler colonialism through different means such as church, the mall, and other aspects of community life. Keʻeaumoku Street is an exemplary example because of the different ways that it perpetuates settler colonialism, whether through local life, hiding people who don't fit the idea of paradise, sex work, or the exploitation of Hawaiian culture through commercial businesses. We can see that settler colonialism has taken different forms throughout both history and sections of the street. Solutions to this come in many forms, the first being acknowledgement and education by settlers, and then working towards solidarity with Kanaka Maoli to both decolonize and fight for sovereignty. My future considerations for this project are looking at both the residents of the area as well as business owners and other people who frequent the area, and doing interviews as well as surveys and other forms of data collection. I'd also like to look at what rail does to the area in the next 2 to 5 years and seeing what the effects are, and if the way that Keʻeaumoku Street participates in settler colonialism shifts, as well as looking at other areas around Oahu, particularly other TOD rail designated areas.